Good evening, everyone. It's always a pleasure to see so many familiar faces and also new ones as we embark on yet another chapter of our journey of discovery through this maximum city, Mumbai. My name is Asad Lalji. I'm the CEO of Avid Learning. My tryst with Mumbai began with our iconic series, Multipolis Mumbai, which began in 2012, with which we presented over 50 episodes, a platform for exchange of ideas that brought together the world of arts, fostering a whole new kind of conversation about our city. It was about incubating and supporting new forms of creativity. Many of those discussions were hosted in this very room. In 2021, we started Uncovering Urban Legacies, a series that looked at small but unique communities and how their rich culture and legacy have historically, economically, and socio-culturally shaped the trading port city of Bombay. We delve into the diverse narratives of the Jewish, the Armenian, the Portuguese, Chinese, Sindhis, Parsis, Kolis, and many more. Last year, we shifted our focus to precincts, areas of heritage and cultural value that create a sense of place, and explored Shivaji Park, Kamdevi, Masgon, Kotachiwari, Kolaba through engaging discussions and enriching walkthroughs. For the third iteration of this flagship series, we are zooming in into icons of Bombay, the very landmarks and urban memory keepers that frame the city's memory, movement, and identity. Bombay, now Mumbai, is often described as the city that never sleeps. But I would argue it is a city that never forgets. It's the landmark of stories. Sometimes these stories are loud, like the honk of the Kali Pili taxis weaving through the peak hours. At other times, they're hushed, like the ticking of the forgotten clock towers, or still the gaze of the weathered statues watching the city change around it. And this evening we ask, what do these urban icons, and whether it's taxis, public clocks, and statues, tell us about ourselves? How do we help define a city constantly negotiating with time, memory, and identity? And this brings me to the task at hand. Avid Learning, in collaboration with the National Gallery of Modern Art Mumbai, the Kalagora Association, present Uncovering Urban Legacies, Icons of Bombay, Taxis, Public Clocks, and Statues. A special thank you to Ms. Nidhi Chaudhary, Director of the NGMA, and Deputy Curator Shruti Das for hosting us. So without further ado, please welcome our panel of experts. Photographer Chirodeep Chaudhary, archaeologist, art historian, and author Sandeep Dhaisarkar, photojournalist Fauzan Hussain, historian in training, founder Caravan Heritage, Ishan Sharma, and our moderator for the evening, conservation architect Kruti Garg. Thank you all for being here in such great numbers and being punctual. I mean, we were just talking earlier, like it's so nice that people are actually on time, and we always start 1 minute before time. But thank you for being here and look forward to an exciting discussion. Over to you, Kruti.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Kruti Garg. I'm a conservation architect practicing in Bombay. That's how I like to call the city. I think most of us over here also like to do the same. So Asad has already given a little bit of background, but yes, Bombay has its architectural identity, which has been an emergence of, almost like a mixed pot of cultures, which have come through and shaped the architectural typologies, the urban fabric, and when stitched together, creating a visual landmark of a city unparalleled in the world. So today, yes, we have our gateway. We talk about Bombay, there's certain images that come to our mind immediately. So there's Gateway of India, now also the Sea Link, now also the Coastal Road. But always we have certain iconic structures, monuments, some assuming elements as well, which have been part of the city's fabric. Those are the things that we're going to talk about today. So all the way from like when the city's planning was done and structures were being planned and public spaces, open spaces, urban nodes, squares were being designed, statues found their way dotting various places in these public squares. these statues, I mean, and obviously they've not just been public markers, they've also been identity markers. We all know Kala Ghoda gets its name because of the statue which was there, the erstwhile statue of King Edward VIII. And moving on from there, we also have on the background at a time when we didn't have our wristwatches and we didn't have our analog or digital clocks, we had the city telling us, almost ensuring that we all run on schedule. So we had the clock towers going, chiming every 15 minutes or at the interval. There was also times when the clock towers were running at different time zones. They were different. There was just not a common time zone across the country even. So we talk about these, what I call the not-so-mute witnesses of history. Chirudeep is going to talk about that a little bit. And then from there, as much as these have been guardians of the city and in motion, we have the Kali Pili taxis as well. So not just the heritage of a city is, through these built forms and architectural landmarks, they're also through these elements which also become the identity of the city. These sort of, everyone, I think all of us here have personal memories to do with Kali Pili taxis. Everyone has a story to tell and how they've been etched in our memories while in the city. So we talk about that. And of course, them becoming a part of popular culture and showcasing in all the movies, and how that culture has informed the storytelling of the city of Bombay as well. So moving ahead, I think we'll start with Chirudeep, giving us a little introduction about himself and his work. And you can answer this question while you're doing that how did you come about and documenting the clocks of the city?
Hi. I'm going to actually read out from a text just so I don't ramble and eat into time. Okay, I tend to ramble a bit if I'm talking about a subject like clocks. Okay, so this project of mine, Seeing Time, is an architectural documentation project that has been going on since 1996 and is of Bombay's public clocks. A documentation such as this, I believe, both in terms of the city's architectural heritage and one that encompasses such a long period that is about 29 years and still running, of searching, observing, and photographing a particular aspect of the city's architecture, has possibly never been done in the city of Bombay, nor possibly about any other city in India. Now, somewhere in the history of this city, between when the idea of time was fluid and unfettered, to now when a more personalized notion of time is available on our wristwatches and on our mobile phone screens, the city was governed by a notion of public time. It's what Kruti was talking about. Telling the time, say about 100 years back, was a kind of public service of sorts. So between about 1870s, the 1870s and about 1905, when Indian Standard Time came into play, there were three different overlapping times that were being followed in the city of Bombay. Okay, so there was something called an Indian Mean Time, which was synchronized to time in Madras. There was Port Signal Time, which was synchronized to GMT. And there was what was also called as Bombay time or Colaba time, which was as per the position of the sun. Okay, so Bombay time would be different from Ahmedabad time, would be different from Dhaka time or whatever. Yeah. So these buildings that I've been photographing, most of the clocks, now forgotten, stand testament to that period of time in the city's history. A significant percentage of these public clocks are in the Fort Precinct, the original business district in Old British Bombay, where appointments must have been important and time might have been money. The rest were scattered and exist in clusters in the residential and mercantile localities through the city, And reasons for their existence range from desiring a landmark to serving the neighborhood or simply to know when to pray to one's gods. I have found clocks on cathedrals, mosques, agyaris, temples, at the city's docks, in stadiums, in colleges, on drinking water piles and residential tenements. These buildings stretch from the Sassoon Dock in South Bombay to the northern suburb of Goregaon. I now know of 109 such clocks, and we are still adding more. So this is possibly going to be Bombay's latest clock tower. This is at Mankhurd, just when you come down the Eastern Freeway and turn left to go towards the Eastern Express Highway. So that's a picture on the left is shot on 4th March 2025, and this is a few days later. You see the clock dial has come up, but it's still, this evening while coming here, I saw it still looks like that. So I have no idea when it would become functional. What I'm going to share with you all today, however, is not a selection of the photographs that actually make up the project, because I'm assuming that many of you all may have caught one of the 4 exhibitions that have happened during the last 29 years at different places and different occasions around the city. What I'm going to show you all are spaces that most of you all have perhaps never experienced. And this was actually, I consider a great privilege to kind of have had access to the insides of many of these rooms. Okay, most of these clocks, just to let you all know, don't work. So that's the Sassoon Docks at Colaba. That's the tiny room where the machines of this clock are housed. And that's Mohammad Bhai Damani, the man who kind of looks after the clock, the man who actually repaired the clock once the Bombay Port Trust decided to, get it fixed. And very interesting, how Mohammad Bhai kind of went about doing it. Maybe in the course of the evening we'll talk about those as anecdotes. But today, if you were to enter Sassoon Dock, you would find this mural. I think it's one of those rare things with a bit like a hat tip to, a kind of Bombay hero of sorts. That's the David Sassoon Library, a stone's throw from here. That's the inside room. It's this sort of tiny wood-paneled room, a bit like the room that we are in now, but like really, really tiny. I'm going to try and see if this, the sound, I wish the sound was on, but it's quite amazing. How silent the sound, how delicate the sound of the pendulum actually is. Yeah, that's the clock tower of the Naval Dockyard. Again, not too far from here. That's the inside. It took about a couple of years of writing letters and then waiting for permission, writing more letters. When finally the permissions came through, all of a sudden, unfortunately, the time when I was allowed, the clock tower was under restoration, which is a couple of months back. So it was covered up in blue tarpaulin, but I was still shown the machine. So there you can see at the bottom this gentleman called Vinayak Pednekar, who actually works at the dock and, maintains and repairs the clock and keeps it operational. That's the St. Thomas Cathedral, one of the oldest structures in this part of the city. That's the winding staircase, one part of the winding staircase that is taking you up to where the clocks are housed. That's the machine. So you can see in comparison to the Sassoon docks or even the David Sassoon Library, that this is a much larger machine, much larger kind of room that houses it. And that's Prakash Chavan, who's a bit of a all-purpose man at the cathedral and also kind of looks after the clock. Those are the weights and pulleys on the left, which, you know, such machines kind of require, such clocks require, and those are the bells. Uh, I bet most of you all haven't heard those bells. That's what it sounds like. In this city where it's kind of now so noisy, I mean, I don't know if any of us have actually heard this bell when it does ring. That's Fulchand Nivas at Chowpatty. What you see on the left, the image on the right is an old ad of Mercedes-Benz. And what you see on that picture, that's an old photograph, you see a Mercedes-Benz sign at the top. That used to be India's first neon sign, okay? And it used to kind of revolve. And what you see on the left is that room just below the sign. And that hole on the top is where the shaft used to kind of go and connect to it, and that used to be the revolving mechanism at the base. That's the room below that. And those wooden planks that you see in the front, I mean, that's where, you know, the machine used to be, which used to kind of run the clock. The fascinating stories I was told by Sunil Zaveri, who you see in this photograph here, I mean, after whose grandfather this building is named, you know, about how Devanand shot for a film. There's a film called Fantoosh. If you have seen it, there's a scene towards the beginning of the film where he's trying to commit suicide and that he's trying to hang from the clock or jump off the top of that building. Okay, that's Bhagat Bhuvan. That's at Ville Parle. It's a private residence. I mean, this is one of two such buildings that I've come across in all these years of looking. Private residences that have clocks. So that this is the mechanism of the clock that is in the inside in their bedroom. So if you see that open window, that's the room that I'm in right now where I'm photographing. And that's the machine. And that's Janak Bhagat, the current Bhagat family elder. Yeah. And that's the furthest clock that I found. That's Goregaon. That's the RA Dairy. The image you see on the right is the bit about is actually the staircase that takes you up into that room. So you can see the condition that it is in. I will the other. I mean, I'll move on to other stuff later. But I think for the moment, I'll halt here. We can see other pictures as we go along later in the evening.
Thanks, Chirudeep. Sandeep, would you like to take the podium and talk a little about your heritage walks, which focus on the sculptures in Mumbai?
I wish you all a very happy World Book Day. And I'm an author. I have written 3 books on history of Mumbai, which I published from 2022, 23, and then 24. The last is latest one. So my focus was always Mumbai, and I believe many people have written so much about Mumbai, but it is the responsibility of future historians to contribute something new always. So that's what I tried to do. The first one is on the Pathare Kshatriyas of Bombay, a community, a native community, or you can say early migrant community in Mumbai. So I have documented their history and famous personalities and rituals and temples, etc. The second book is on history of Ville Parle with a chapter on Juhu, which helps us understand how the suburbs are and were, and because no one goes beyond Bandra when it comes to heritage, right? So that's why I started writing about Ville Parle. I started taking heritage walks of Ville Parle. Then this is the latest book, which is called Shri Bimbakhyan. So this was a manuscript in Marathi written in 16th, 17th century, and can be considered as the earliest book on history of Mumbai. So if someone asks you who has written the first book on Mumbai, that's it. It's Shri Bimbakyan, and it was originally written by Keshavacharya and many others. So before me, there was a historian called, great historian, Maratha historian called V.K. Rajwade. So he was the first one to edit another version of manuscript, and he published it in 1924. So after 100 years, I have published this and edited this in English, so that the history of Bombay, which remains unheard, unread, can be easily accessible to non-Marathi speakers. So this is something which joins the what you say. There are ancient historians, then there are historians who work on modern history. So no one has written anything about medieval history when it comes to English books. So I think this is the one which will bridge that missing gap. Okay, so I started working on statues, especially sculptures from the Bombay School of Art around 2014 or 13, and maybe before that, 2012. And I started studying sculptors from the Bombay School of Art. Like the first one is Rao Bahadur G.K. Mhatre, second is B.V. Talim, third is a Padma Shri awardee called V.P. Karmarkar, and there are many more, like Wagh Studio is there in Girgaon Chowpatty. So when I found all these statues in one place, so I was very much interested in developing a walk. And because of that, I started looking for stories behind these statues, which people would like to listen. So there are many people who just pass by these statues, but they don't have time to lift their head and see, oh, this is G.K. Gokhale, this is Jamshedji Jijibhoy. So that's the reason why I started conducting heritage walks. Now, when it comes to Mumbai, Mumbai is the only city in India which has a cluster of beautiful full-size statues right in the heart of the old city. And this means that it was an important public space, that is fort, and it was used to commemorate its civic leaders, philanthropists, and social reformers. Okay, and these people were truly immortalized when their statues were made in bronze and marble, and these statues with pedestals highlighted their titles, professions, okay, their important contribution because of which that statue was erected, and some work which they had done, which was a very important social cause. So I see these personalities as the real makers of city of Mumbai because they brought progressive thoughts, they brought infrastructure, capital, and law. So these things are the foundations of city of Mumbai, and that makes our city a very different one. So if you go to Ahmedabad, you won't find these many statues. If you go to Calcutta, you won't find these many full-size statues. Of course, if you go to Calcutta, you may find many equestrian statues. Bombay has only one. But that's what makes a city different, right? And see, the British were the ones who introduced this concept to us. And our ancestors, Indians, in the late 19th century, early 20th century, they adopted this tradition. And but today it is completely different from what it used to be, because let's take, for example, there are 3 statues of Sir Jamshedji Jijibhoy in Mumbai. First was originally erected in Kemp's Corner, but later on it was shifted to Veer Nariman Road. Okay, that's the bronze one. Then there are 2 more, one in Town Hall, and second is kept in Sir J.J. Hospital. So we need to understand that one statue is in the public space, two are inside the buildings, which means Bombay or any other city in India had only one statue. That was a decision which we find that the Britishers took: one person, one memorial in the city. No too many statues of uh, people. Of course, Queen Victoria, you find many statues, but those are located in different cities. Okay, there were not 10 Queen Victoria statues in one city. So something similar. I may get beaten up by this, but yeah, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, we have too many statues in Mumbai. So, and they are now planning to put one more in the sea. That's another story. But we need to understand the concept, how it has changed. Do we really want too many statues in Mumbai? I leave that question to you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandeep. Farzan, would you like to please take the stage and introduce your documentation of the Premier Padmini taxis?
Hi. At the outset, let me confess that I'm not a very big talker. And this guy has given me only 2 minutes, so I've made my presentation very short. So bear with me. Okay, to begin with, this is my fourth book on the city of Bombay. And I've done between Bombay and Mumbai, Silver Screen, during COVID, one book. And this is going to be my fourth book. And I'm looking at the Premier Padmini taxi in the landscape of Bombay. Okay, and when we talk, I'll tell you why I latched on to this subject, and I'm going to quickly show you some pictures which I have shot at in the course of 18 years. Okay, I've been working on this subject for the last 18 years. Okay, so I have covered every aspect of taxi being in the city, festivals, riots, bomb blast, and you name it, and I was there shooting pictures, but also keeping taxi in the back of my mind, So I've got only a sample work here, but my book would be having far more images, So let's quickly see them. So this is, immersion time when you have small Ganpatis to take back, so to immersion. So this is one small a family who own the taxi, and they usually take their own Ganpati to Chowpatty. So this is a very contrast to Bombay skyline, the new and the old iconic moments, This had just come up at Nana Chowk, and it was like all glitz, And eventually, taxi had so much space, So it would be usually used as, carrying fish, vegetables, fruits, etc., because of its huge space it provided, Of course, the Rose Market, again, a very famous Dabawalas, How can I not include them in the pictures with the taxi, It's a very interesting story. I'm going to tell about this story later on when we start conversing. But this was during the Vrat Puja at Lower Parel. And how I got into the taxi to shoot this also is a story which I will tell you guys. So monsoon time, still the tire needs to be washed. Yeah, I had gone to do another story of the Bora community, and I was perched on a height, and suddenly I say, rows of taxis and rows of Bora crowd, This was at the RTO, where you go for passing your vehicle every year, I think. And, at the later date, I could see only one or two Premier Padminis. Otherwise, it was all surrounded by, Indicas and Marutis and, all other cars, except I saw one small opening for my Premier Padmini. I just managed to capture this shot. Thank you, guys. We'll talk more about it.
Thanks, Farzan. Ishan, we'd like to know a little about you and your heritage works, which were inspired from the film set in Bombay, especially Basu Chatterjee.
This is a government mic. I don't know if they'll stop me in between now. But I am a historian, and I look at history through a very different lens. And I'm not a Bombay wala, and also I'm a Gen Z. So a completely different perspective from all the three great icons of Mumbai that you see. I'll talk about Bombay, not Mumbai. Icons of Mumbai are different. Icons of Bombay are different. We'll find out. Three questions that I kind of counter in my work always is, are cityscapes in cinema merely static backdrops, or do they provide insights into the narrative and reflect the lives of the characters? Second is how cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata have been portrayed in cinema, and how has this representation evolved over the time? Third, which is very important for our times, is there a singular representation of a city, or can different representations exist? The multiplicity question. Michael Foucault, who is Mr. Foucault, or whatever you want to call him, my favorite philosopher, he once said, a whole history remains to be written of spaces which would be at the same time the history of powers, from the great strategies of geopolitics to the little tactics of the habitat. So I'll quickly just run through Bombay, my favorite, second favorite city. My favorite city is my Kanpur, where I belong to. After partition of British India, you all know the loss of Lahore, which was a famous major center of film production. Bombay became the epitome of modern city. Its port town status and European influence actually helped the urban aesthetics, and it made an ideal setting for Hindi cinema. The first, probably the first film that you see post-independence, when India was struggling to get an identity of its own post-independence, Taxi Driver, 1954, Devanand's. How many of you have seen that film, Devanand's Taxi Driver? जिन्होंने नहीं देखी, कोई आपने गुनाह नहीं किया, बाद में देख लीजिएगा साहब, ऐसे क्या है? Then Shri 420, the opening monologue of the film defines Bombay. Is Bombay filled with only deaf people? ये हिंदी में है कि क्या इधर सब गूंगे हैं, सब बहरे हैं? तो जो बेगर है वो कहता है कि ये बम्बई है मेरे भाई, बम्बई, यहाँ पे सिर्फ पैसे की खनकार सुनाई देती है. People in Bombay have the jingle of coins. This is Bombay. Bombay. High buildings are made of cement. People have hearts of stone. Only one thing is sacred. That's money. So icons of Bombay, kind of, I try to locate them through this one monologue. This is a beautiful screen grabs from Shri 420, where Bombay was 420 kilometers away, which was, you all know, the previous penal code. Now we have a new one. I don't know the new one's Dhara 420. Then comes the famous Choti Si Baat. This is the Dadar, near Shivaji Park. This is a bus stop. And this was a Bombay where you had to stand in lines for the double-decker or the red bus. Now you have a Hogwarts-looking Harry Potter-style bus, which is very fashionable. I've been to that once. But there's a charm in the old world. I was not born during that time. I have borrowed nostalgia from my grandfather's generation. Okay, so pardon me for whatever I'll say, but that is what I feel. I've never witnessed this. This is Bombay, where in an intimate space you can either be very close or very far away from each other. From Rajnigandha, where here he's looking at her, but in the scene, if you see, they look away from each other. There's a distance between them in the most intimate space of a taxi. And whereas in Piya Ka Ghar, which is again Basu Chatterjee, you see the closeness where that guy is showing her around Bombay. And the song is Aaja Tujhe Bombay Ki Sair Kara Du, which starts from Churchgate, goes around Flora Fountain and Jahangir Art Gallery, Devin Sassoon Library, everything. That was shot by K.K. Mahajan on a handheld camera on a bike, Such a beautiful song. Please do listen to that song. You'll have to watch the film on YouTube. It's part 11 of the film on YouTube. So that you will go and see. I know you are not going to watch the entire film. Another thing that Chirodeep also mentioned, the public time. One of the things that I found in Basuda's films, Basu Chatterjee that is the use of the Eastern Watch Company clocks. These were the public watches that were used in local train stations. And I was told by Meenakshi Shetty, who's an art critic, film critic, that people used to tell ke itne baje is ghadi ke niche mil jana. There used to be only one clock in the whole platform that used to be the location marker when there were no GPS at that time. So for the Gen Z, I'm giving you context, I speak for my community. So, so another is Choti Si Baat. This is the red taxi, which had the BD ka, BD cha, whatever that advertisement of the BD, and the film poster, Parine. Bombay, icons of Bombay are incomplete without talking about the film posters. Film posters are true icons of the cinematic Bombay as we know it. Another is cinema halls. These are icons which we might not talk about today, but for your context, those who want to read further or come to my walk, they can always. This is Sterling Cinema, where Amol Palekar is shown watching the film. Jane Man Tere Do Nayan starts playing here. The other is a tribute to Basuda by Sriram Raghavan in Merry Christmas, where the actor is watching a film, followed by, I missed that sequence, where Vijay Sethupathi is taking Katrina Kaif to her place in a taxi. They are looking away, much like Rajnigandha. Talking about Fauzan's work on taxis, one cannot escape the question of the migrants in a city. This is a film called Gaman by Muzaffar Ali that talks about the taxi drivers who come from Awadh to Bombay, and he's missing his house, and then the song plays, सीने में जलन आँखों में तूफान सा क्यों है, इस शहर में हर शख्स परेशान सा क्यों है. These are the icons. The objects are not the icons. The people who make the city are the icons. And they can be migrants, They can be anybody who come and accept this city as their home, or they stay here and contribute to the city. Statues, this is from the walk. We talk about the statues and their relevance that Sandeep has worked on for a long time. Just behind the statue is the Oval Maidan, which people forget. This is the very famous song, Rim Jhim Gire Savan from? किसी को नहीं पता? नहीं, मौसम मैं तो मजाक कर रहा था आपसे, लेकिन this is Basuda's Mausam, and this is Amitabh Bachchan and Maushami Chatterjee, and beautiful song. Then this is Suna Mahal, the Art Deco remains of, it has become an icon, the Art Deco buildings, and the context is, this is on reclamation. Another icon of the city is the reclamation, the colonial nature of reclamation. So I think the nature of the city is colonizing and exploitation, sadly, which we cannot miss while talking about the greats of the city. I think as a historian, I reflect on these. As a nostalgic person, I never reflect on these. Then, of course, the Marine Drive to end, this is the end of the city where you kind of come after a long day to relax. It's a public space where you can be very intimate. Nobody bothers, nobody cares in a city like Bombay, which is the most beautiful thing, where there are no public spaces for you to sit, but there are places like these where you can do anything that you want to do. This is that song, Aaja Tujhe Bombay Ki Sair Kara Du. And thank you so much. That was my time. So these icons, these icons represent three icons of Mumbai. First is resilience, second is ever-moving spirit, and third is accommodating. Bombay is the only city which can accommodate everybody and anybody. And we must preserve that legacy of this city.
Thank you, Ishan. That was fabulous. I think taking the lead from what you said, Bombay's true icons are its resilience, acceptability, and so taking from your the last line that you said, Bombay's true icons, which are reflective in all that we are talking about today. We're talking about the built form, we're talking about the intangible, we're talking about the essence, we're talking about the feeling, the spirit of the city, which is relevant in all these aspects. So the heritage which comes with the built structure, which is seen, which has been the backdrop to stories that have shaped the city, from clock towers to the public markers and identity markers, to the taxis or even the Victorias or even the red double-decker buses which used to, or even the trams which used to run in the city at the time, have been tools in motion, which have been almost like they're the city's movers. So people have been moving in and out of them. There are stories within them. So I'd like to ask Chirudeep that how do you think how has the role of cities' timekeepers changed? And is there a way to keep them relevant in today's time, in today's context?
One of the things is that, over the last 30 years that I've been photographing these buildings with clocks, the thing that I've figured is that most of them don't work. Okay, there's a very small percentage of them that are kind of working. The thing that my project had started with me kind of just trying to photograph buildings that had clocks. And it kind of grew from there in terms of my interest in the subject grew in the sense that I think you started to realize that the story is really about technology. It wasn't really about just buildings that I was photographing. It was really about technology and the redundancy of technology. Why else would so many clocks not be working today and stay that way? Okay, because if it did matter, like it did at one point, when these clocks needed to work, so people in the city, while they were moving around, knew what the time was and how to keep appointments and whatever else. So it obviously, that purpose was kind of dead. Okay, it was interesting. I was some years back, I was in Switzerland on an assignment for the National Geographic. And one of the things that kept striking me was the number of buildings that had clocks on them. Okay? And what you also realized was that, I kept noticing them. Every time I would be crossing them, on my way out of the hotel or back to the hotel or going for dinner or whatever else, I would kind of look up at the clock, even though I had a wristwatch, even though I had a mobile in my pocket on which I could look at the time. But the thing is, because the clock was working, because it was around and it was working, it became part of my habit to kind of look up at it. Now, this is something that I heard, you were asking about how the project has evolved over time. I forgot to answer that. So, at one point in the life of the project, I had got some of my students to actually go out and conduct interviews with random people around the city. And these interviews were primarily to get a sense of what the clocks meant for people, okay, when they were alive or even the ones that are still working. For instance, I remember when the guy at Aram Vada Pav below Capitol Cinema, when we spoke to him, he would kind of talk about how, they never wear a watch because the big clock of VT is right in front of them. Okay, and thankfully that really kind of is not working. There were lots of other people who we met across the city who would kind of tell us about how they remembered how the clock once worked, how while they were going for work, they would throw a glance at it to kind of say, oh, am I still on time. I hope I'm not going to miss my train. You know, in this very typical Bombay thing, right? I mean, I'm walking to the station and you're kind of hurrying up, you know, that kind of thing. For instance, there was this particular clock. This is at Prarthana Samaj. It's an unusual clock. It's not on a building. It's on the shop front, okay, at the curve of a building, of a shop, of a sari shop called Sridhar Bhalchandra Ani Company, okay, and the clock, it didn't have numbers, it had alphabets instead of the numbers, okay, there was Shri, Bha, that kind of thing. And that clock at one point stopped working. Incidentally, the day I went and met the guys, I had photographed it on a couple of occasions, but the day I met them was the day the shop was downing its shutters, because who in today's time wears the Nawari sari, right? That's what the guy used to sell. So he was downing his shutters, and I remember talking to him about the clock. It had kind of not been functioning for a few years. And he told us stories about how people in the neighborhood would keep, you know, when they would pass by, people who knew the guy, knew the shop, would often kind of tell him, hey, why don't you get the clock working? You know, I mean, it helps us, okay? We have heard stories like this in the course of doing those interviews. So it kind of makes me wonder whether, you know, is it relevant in today's time? I don't know. In the sense that the reason for their existence today would perhaps only be, you know, as an object. I don't think the functionality of it would kind of matter. Okay. Having said that, also the thing is, I mean, you know, we are in this sort of very time fluid kind of culture. Okay. I mean, I don't think, like the people in Switzerland, I mean, I can see why it would matter. I don't think for us time really matters. I mean, you know, so whether the clock works, doesn't work, whether it's 5 minutes slow, fast, I don't think that would matter. I think if it is working, I don't think it would begin to rule our lives, which is what the British wanted, which is what it was seen as. You know, public clocks were really seen as a colonial import, you know. So I don't think the clocks, if they came back, would kind of begin to dictate our lives. But I think they would just be there as interesting artifacts. Yeah.
Thank you. But do you think that because they're not active anymore, or they're not being used, do you fear that down the line they will be, they'll just be mere structures, and possibly, of course, our city is well protected and our heritage buildings are do have a certain level of protection as far as heritage is concerned. But that 10 years down the line or 20 years down the line, people probably wouldn't even know that there was a clock sitting atop this building.
Yeah.
So as part of its fabric, as part of its heritage, there will be some kind of loss.
Yes.
So is there a way that we can, even if it's not functionally relevant, it continues to say, or even possibly make it functionally relevant? Maybe change the way the clock functions, maybe keep certain things about it, but still have them, sort of.
Okay, it's interesting. Can I just show some pictures? It kind of connects to what she's saying. So, you know, over the years, while doing research, I mean, one of the things that has popped up is that the number of clocks that we have already lost in the city. Okay, I had no idea that some of these even existed. Electric House had a clock. Okay, I think that that danda from where it hangs, I think, is still around. Okay, the clock is not there. David Sassoon Library obviously did, but I mean, also the Army and Navy building, you can see it there, you know, had a clock. This was a very famous one called the West End clock This is right, where Kitab Khana is at the corner of that. The Balladpur station had a clock. There's a petrol pump. The petrol pump is still there. It's the oldest petrol pump in the city. Carfuel. Carfuel had a clock. I know that Daniel is very keen to kind of get the clock restored, and we keep hoping that it would get restored by the time the book is out. When that is, I have no idea. But then hopefully that it would make it to the book. Okay, so that's at Hanging Gardens. The interesting thing is this structure at the back no longer exists, but this bit kind of still stands. The clock is no longer there. Okay, that's the Gaudevi, the Goldeval at Nal Bazar. Okay, that's Noor Bagh. And that's the Memani building at Nagpada. Okay, so these are clocks that we have lost. Thing is, the reasons. I mean, one of the things that while we were doing the interview, what we heard was many of the people, especially like say, so which are the clocks that are working? I mean, largely these are the buildings which are public institutions, okay, like say VT works, Rajabai Tower works, the Lion Gate works, David Sassoon works, things like that. The ones which aren't working are a lot of buildings, let's say in areas like say Kalba Devi, Buleshwar, Dongri, Dadar, those kind of areas. A lot of these are not working. And the reasons what we found are not necessarily just apathy, okay? There are far more complex reasons. Like say, for instance, the Rent Control Act. So if it's something like, a chawl which has a clock, the guys are probably still paying rents which would, one may probably feel ashamed to probably talk about in today's times. Okay, but given those rents, the landlord is unable to kind of maintain his building. I mean, forget looking after the clock. I mean, that's probably his last thing, right? However, having said that, we did hear many kind of instances when people told us, I wish we could get these repaired. But one of the other problems is that a lot of these are of a vintage where the manufacturing companies have shut down, okay? So parts are not available. There are very few people, Mohammad Bhai Damani is one of the few people. I think there are about 3 or 4 people in the city who know how to repair and how to make these clocks work. Okay, that Sridhar Bhalchandra that I was talking at one point used to be a clock that used to have a certain kind of heavy mechanism at the back. That mechanism doesn't exist. They changed it to a battery operated thing, and then they figured that the batteries that are available today couldn't kind of take the weight of the heavy hands. So there are kind of all these weird reasons that exist, So I think it requires a much more collective effort if we kind of say, oh, I need to get so many of these clocks working in the city. Yeah.
Thank you. Farzan, I'll turn to you. And I have 2 questions which I'm going to ask together. One is that we would like to know a little more about the iconic taxis and why do you think they symbolize, they are symbolic in the city of Bombay. And the other about certain anecdotes about your, in the process of your photographing these taxis. If you've come across some interesting stories.
I just want to go back to one picture which I was supposed to talk about, or maybe 2 pictures. Yeah. Okay. So this was very interesting. I was, generally I step out to shoot any festivity, anything that is going to happen in the city, and I generally take my camera around. And I stopped at one place at Lower Parel where they were doing this Vrat Puja right on the road. And there was a taxi, 2 taxis parked next to where the puja was happening. And so I asked the driver, the meter was down. So I asked the driver, can I, is it waiting? Are you waiting? He said, no, it's my wife who I married. And she was earlier staying in Lower Parel. And now I have moved to Mulund. But every year I come back and we do the Vrat Puja here, and she wears this Nawari sari, and I bring her here, she does the puja, and we go back. So it's like very nostalgic for him to come back, and then I asked him, can I enter your taxi, since it was already waiting. He said, yeah, please get in. And I made this picture of his wife, which is there, and and I also gave him the picture later on, which he was very happy about. Okay, second picture I will quickly talk about. Okay, this is Rafiq Chacha, whose job at Baikala Market is to pack the taxi every morning. Okay, he gets a call from some vegetable seller in Lower Parel, in Ville Pale. Okay, and he tells him the quantity that he has to pack it. The quantity could be anything, but his job is to fit everything. It's a task. It's a master class in packing and all that. And every inch of the taxi is used. Forget the dicky and the top part. I'm talking about the inside part also. So I was like, I used to keep meeting him very often, and I would keep making fun of him, कि अगर और एक थैली जा सकता है क्या, इधर ले आओ डाल दूंगा मैं अंदर. So this was amazing experience. He still has to fill the dicky and the top portion, but right now he's just packing the inside, and the cops will certainly overlook when they are passing. So the chacha assured me कि कुछ नहीं होगा, मैं भर दूंगा ना, कुछ नहीं होगा. So these are the and there are so many, but we are running short of time. But does this answer your question?
And why do you think they were iconic, and how are they symbolic to the city?
Okay, so even today, when I go and see any painting exhibitions or anything related to Bombay city, you will always find a painter drawn a Premier Padmini taxi on the road. So they have still not moved to. Yeah, look at him. I'm going to borrow his T-shirt. When I launch my book, I'm going to take this T-shirt. So this has still not gone out of fashion, And one very shortly, I'll tell you one thing. I went to a movie shoot which was called Khali Pili. Khali Pili, where the driver, the hero is a taxi driver, And I went on the set. I wanted to make some pictures on the set, and I saw a taxi. I was very excited because I said, wow, they've managed to retain a taxi, for the movie. And then later I realized they had taken a Fiat car, painted the taxi into yellow and black, and they were using it in the movie, So it's still not gone out of people's mind, It's still so much ingrained in the mind, And I don't think it will ever go away,
The current scheme of things with the Olas and the Ubers and the Rapidos and everything. I mean, of course, Premier Padminis are no longer on the road, and they've sort of off. But they've just become sort of like a public memory,
Yep.
in a sense, and they are sort of alive through images and the movies, and in that sense, do you think these can become objects of art, which can then be also used as public art and within the city spaces, so that their relevance is alive?
Unfortunately, no. I think even the Doshi family, who actually own the company who made Premier Padmini taxis, I think they have one taxi kept when his father, Vinod Doshi, used to drive, and they have retained only one taxi. But unfortunately, we don't have that foresight to make it as a, like how Ford would make something of that history of that car. But unfortunately, no, I don't think so. And coming to your question about the relevance of Kali Pili, the generation today is not going to get into a Kali Pili, that's for sure. Okay, and also when we used to travel, the thing that we used to always look for is, if the driver is wearing a white clothes, white shirt, white pant, that means he's the owner. That means the taxi would be neat and clean and well kept. And if the taxi driver is wearing khaki, that means he's a driver. He will certainly not keep the taxi up to the mark. So you would try and avoid getting into a taxi with a driver who's wearing a khaki. Okay, so that was one way of ensuring that you're getting into a clean taxi.
Thank you for taking.
Thank you, Fauzan. Sandeep, I'd like to ask you about during your walks, and what do you, when you see the British era statues have obviously moved from various locations, can you share us the story of the statue, King George V statue, which was located in front
Sure.
of Gateway of India?
Can I? So this is one of the unknown statues in Mumbai, which is sadly kept inside a shed, a cement shed, and hidden with two syntax taki. And this is right next to this building, by the way. This statue and his son's statue, Edward the Eighth, who abdicated the throne for a lady. And unfortunately, when these statues were broken, they were damaged by people in around 1960-65. Fortunately, these statues were saved, and they were shifted to a very secret location, which later on was disclosed. And we made a story for this to shift it in either in CSMVS Museum or maybe Dr. Bhaudaji Lad Museum. So George V, as we know, is the only British king who visited India twice. His father visited once in 1875-76, and but as a Prince of Wales. But this guy, he came in India, landed in Bombay in 1905-6, and laid the foundation stone of Prince of Wales Museum. And then later on, a statue was erected there. So where this same guy, a young prince, is wearing a naval uniform, holding a telescope. Okay, so that statue is very much still in the museum. And then when he died, it was G.K. Mhatre who was asked to do a statue, which is this one, without a crown, since he died. And again, you'll see the beautiful robe and how he has placed it. This used to be a bronze statue. And when Mhatre shifted to Villeparle from Girgaon, this statue was made in Villeparle East. And when Sir Roger Lumley, the governor of Bombay, visited Villeparle, a small suburb, he ordered to create a road outside Mhatre's studio. And that's how Mahant Road was born. And he visited the studio and appreciated this work. That's how this statue was later on placed in front of Gateway of India, which reminds of India Gate, where exactly now the Subhash Chandra Bose statue stands. Same place, King George V's statue was placed there. So this reminds of Delhi, India Gate, connects that with Gateway of India. So for me, what important is, now that people know that the statue is in the shade, it should be moved to a safer location where people would come, heritage lovers would come and appreciate history, art. And these two statues are very much important because, like I said, Bombay, King George visited Bombay twice. Similarly, we have two statues. This is only in Mumbai, nowhere else. So people, especially students from JJ School of Arts, can benefit when they study a young King George and an older King George. The age difference can be studied. At the same time, how the Western sculptor used his statuary technique of making a statue, and how a Bombay School artist worked on making a statue. I think we should see art from this angle, and not just a personality who is King George. Nahi, ye hamara raja nahi hai, we should not keep it in public space. But see from a different angle. G.K. Mhatre, a Maharashtrian who is a first Indian sculptor making memorial statues, has made King George V statue, which was placed right in front of Gateway of India. Okay, so this is a product of Swadeshi art. We should see from that angle. And this is how such masterpieces should be preserved, and students should be benefited of these statues.
And also back, probably, if not back in its original place, but at least in
I'm
some
not sure
context.
about that. Huh?
No, of course not. But in context, at least the story should be there to be heard.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Just one additional information. I think Ishan can answer that question. There is one film, I don't remember its title, but there are the actors, three Ganguly brothers have, correct. That film, that song, you can see this statue. Okay, that's it.
You can also see in the same movie a song which is running around the Kala Ghoda, and you actually see the old Kala Ghoda
Right, right.
statue in that movie as well. So I think this question is common to both you and Ishan, and it is because I've been doing heritage walks as well, so do you. So how do you see heritage walks as a tool for preservation of heritage? And do you see through the walks that you've been doing over a period of time that people are interested or invested to know more? And does that create public awareness enough to keep our heritage safe?
Right. So many people have survived my 2-hour walk. So I can guarantee that they are very much interested. And many a times even Chirodip said this. People are so much in hurry to catch their local train, they don't get time to see what their city is about. So that's why I decided to take Sunday morning heritage walks, where people can easily come, see those walks, see those statues, and appreciate art, because statues is all about art. Why this particular gentleman is standing in such a manner? What is he wearing? What kind of pagdi or headgear he is wearing? So it's all men. We don't have female statues, unfortunately, except Masina's statue in Paikala. But yeah, that's why what we try to do, making people aware of history, what its story tells us, what is the iconography of the statue.
So finally, the Gen Zs are finally getting their space, no? But many have survived my 6-hour-long walk also. Basuda's Bombay is a 4 to 6 hour walk. But 60 to 70 people join every time, and it's always, till the end so I might be a good storyteller. I am not very sure. But what the heritage walks do is to raise a very critical question of urbanization. We are moving at such a high speed that we are losing the essence of the city. The city that the people who are here, who survived the 80s and the 70s, they know that that city doesn't exist anymore. I was in conversation with Saeed Akhtar Mirza yesterday, and he said, now I disown the city because the city that I loved, I cherished, doesn't exist anymore. The city has changed not just its name, but the spirit. Kala Ghoda is now the spirit of Kala Ghoda. Doesn't exist anymore. These heritage walks are windows to go back and teach ourselves what to preserve. There's a beautiful book called Kya Bhulu Kya Yaad Karun by Harivansh Rai Bachchan. Kya Bhulu Kya Yaad Karun is what heritage walks let you do. And cinema, I was shocked to see that heritage walks were happening for a long time in Bombay, but nobody did a cinema walk before Basuda's Bombay. I was shocked to see that Bombay is a cinema city. Nobody cares about cinema in this nation, unless it's a good film like Chhawa and others.
Other than Chalti Ka Naam Gaadi, Guru Dutt's Bombay,
Yes,
through
of course.
Devanand and Guru Dutt, okay, Taxi Driver,
Of course.
okay, and you mentioned that also, or Mr. and Mrs. 55, okay, there's a song with Guru Dutt who's driving a taxi and Shyama sitting next to him, they sing, Ye Lo Main Hari Piya, that's the song.
Bilkul.
And then there is Devanand and Wahida Rahman under an umbrella walking down Marine Drive, which is Rimjim Ke Tarane Leke Aayi Baras.
Bilkul.
That is the Baap of the Manzil song you showed. Okay? And then there is a film called Hum Hindustani, in which Helen and Joy Mukherjee, that Bombay is so beautiful, so beautiful. It says Neeli Neeli Ghata Bhigi Bhigi Hawa. Then there is Kishore Kumar in Mr. X in Bombay.
Bilkul.
Mere Mehboob Kayamat Hogi. And then there is Shashi Kapoor and Nanda on Marine Drive. Nana karte pyar tum hi se kar baithe.
बिल्कुल.
You have to see these songs. They have to be on your
And
next.
रोते हुए आते हैं सब हंसता हुआ जो जाएगा. मुकद्दर का
वो भी है.
सिकंदर song
Yes,
is Marine Drive.
absolutely. And of course, the king of all these songs, Naveen Nishchal, Priya Rajwans, in a taxi, in the Bombay rain, tum jo mil gaye ho.
क्या बात.
Okay, done.
क्या
I've
बात.
taken up my time.
So I'll just mention one more thing. Thanks to ma'am for this brilliant. I do talk about these in the walk. So we can't miss out the 80s and the 90s.
My generation, we call it Fiat taxi, not Premier Padmini.
And मेरा जो दिल जितना बूढ़ा है, we call it Chevrolet taxi, which was before the Fiat, which you see in Taxi Driver 1954. But interestingly, cinema and cinema walks, I'll just end it here. Cinemas are the archives of a city which doesn't exist anymore. That is the only way you can look at the past. So we must cherish those, and you must go to different walks and experience them. You might not agree or disagree, that is for sure. This is a democratic country, last I checked. So we all have the right to agree, to disagree. But we must come together to protect the city and the multiplicity of the city.
Hi. You said about you liked Fiat and not Premier Padmini. Till they were in partnership and they had a deal going, it was called Fiat. Once the deal went off, and then they started calling Premier Padmini. But everything remained the same. Not a screw was changed, but just the name was changed.
I think I'm just going to take a little cue from the movies being an archives to our history. And it's very interesting that when we were working on the restoration of Opera House, and we had to, so of course there were some archival pictures that we always refer to when we're working with the buildings. And we had to recreate the side balconies, which obviously in the original scheme of things was seating. We couldn't make them seating anymore because of the fire norms and all of that. But we did go back to watching a few movies where Opera House was shown before those balconies were pulled down. And it sort of gave us an insight when we were drawing up our plans and designs and everything. Even the detailing, like the carving detailing it was very helpful. So yes, I mean, cinema has totally been, and especially Bombay, because it's completely sums up the whole the evening today, where we've spoken about all these things which are completely in synergy with one another. And I don't think so the statues and the people whose statues they were, and the stories of the citizens and everything, that's what sums up Bombay, and I think that's why Bombay is beautiful. I think we've opened the floor for questions, so if anyone has questions, please.
So actually, I wanted to start off by saying that I'm a lawyer at the High Court, and you mentioned that no one really hears these clocks, and the High Court is very close to Rajabai. We don't hear it at all. But when I was in my 3rd or 4th year of law school, I was interning with a judge, and his courtroom was courtroom 37. That was right next to the Rajabai clock tower. And I remember the first day that I started interning, I heard this ding. And you're not actually allowed to keep your phones on loud. So I was like, whose phone is that? Like, what? And then I realized, oh, this is the clock tower. And through that internship, which lasted like a year, the ding of that clock actually became like really meaningful to me, because I was like, oh, thank God, like time is moving. Like this is getting over. I need to go home. And even now when I'm working at the High Court and I leave, I look at the clock, I look at the time. And so I do think there is some functionality in it, but even if there isn't, I think our generation really struggles with hobbies that we're not good at. and I think for those reasons we'd question things like a clock that maybe works some days and doesn't work some days, or that's constantly in repair. So yeah, my question was just that, do you think that, like the fact that we just cannot do things now for fun, like everything we do has to be some kind of a achievement or some kind of a productivity task, like do you think that sort of is part of the reason why, we don't care about these?
Do you still have access to that room?
Yes. Actually, if you want a really good view of the Rajabai clock tower,
Exactly, that's why I'm asking.
Start interning with the judge. Ask him to take you on the other side of the High Court. And I actually had a chance to go on the judge's side of the High Court, right up, like there's a secret staircase that takes you all the way up to the High Court, and then you're like at par with the same height as Rajabai, and I have some really awesome pictures from there.
Amazing.
So yeah.
Thank you. Well, the thing is, I think what this needs is, I think it needs, to start off, I think it needs few people with motivation. I don't think it's possible that a whole city is going to start feeling motivated, or a very large number of people are going to start feeling motivated and say, oh, I think we need to get all of these working. I don't think that's going to happen. I think what you need is a bunch of committed people. Okay? And I think, for instance, I think, like, for instance, you had the Oval Maidan, right? The Oval Maidan, which at one point had gone completely to the dogs. I don't know if Shireen and Naina are here. I think they just left. Shireen, Naina, the Oval Maidan Residents Association, it was a collective of people who got things moving. It's not that somebody sitting in Andheri said, hey, let's get Oval Maidan, back to its old glory or whatever. That's never going to happen, So I think there has to be people, individuals finding reasons to kind of do certain things. You know what I mean? And in a system, correct. So the thing is, if, for instance, if you suddenly say, okay, I need to do something, so you start finding people, similar people, you're drawn to groups, and a collective is formed, and, maybe an action gets taken. I don't think as a city, I think we are in general a mess as a city. I don't think we are going to be rectifying, simpler things like saying, okay, or odd things, not simpler, odd things like, let's get clocks repaired, let's get statues polished. I don't think all that's going to happen. I think it requires smaller groups of committed people to say, can we bring about a change? Yeah?
Thank you.
I wanted to ask about film posters, because it was always hand painted, and they were so gigantic, and that these guys were always doing it by hand, so the proportions were always right, and you could recognize the stars, and it was such a fantastic art thing. I wonder why it hasn't been picked up on, and maybe somebody could include it in art.
It is being done. Sarovar Zaidi is working on the posters these days, and I don't know. It is a piece of art actually. Jerry Pinto has also written on film posters a lot, so it is there, and it requires a lot of labor to make those. Now nobody cares about the posters that are put up on the crossroads. So I don't know what the point of. The posters are kept in the National Film Archive, some of them, and some are in private collections. So at Chor Bazaar mein you can find reproductions.
Yeah.
And I have found a lot of fake ones also being sold for 10,000 rupees, 25,000 rupees, 80,000 rupees. I found Jugnu poster which kal I went to the Chor Bazaar, which is now going under redevelopment. Please go before the redevelopment is done. It's near Jubilee Manzil, the building. And the Jugnu poster, which is a hand-drawn poster of Dilip Kumar, Noor Jahan's last film in India, 1947, it costed 56,000 rupees. It's an A4 size poster. So if you have got that money, please do buy and keep them with you. Otherwise, the museums are not interested because the funding is going down by the day.
Yeah.
So there's nobody who will who can actually restore them or keep them. Film Heritage Foundation is doing some good work.
And
Shivendra
Neville
Dungarpur.
Tully, I would assume. Neville Tully.
Neville is also doing a lot of things in Delhi. So there are some people who are taking that. And Basuda was one of those archivists of film posters. If you see Dil Lagi, if you see Priyatama, if you see Rajnigandha, Choti Si Baat, Baato Baato Mein, every film of Basuda have film posters because Basuda also was a film poster designer for Hemen Gupta. He made 4 film posters. He painted them. He was a caricature artist. And he replaced, I'm told, he replaced Balasaheb Thackeray in Free Press Journal. When Balasaheb Thackeray left the job to join his father, Basu Chatterjee replaced him in Free Press Journal as the cartoonist.
Thank you to our wonderful panel. Just to add to this, I mean, you're talking about film posters, but also the ads, the old billboards. M.F. Hussain used to paint those. He used to do it work. My father used to work with him on those, just newsflash. And Vijay, I think we're going to put you on our next Urban Legacies panel. Huh? So you make sure you don't travel. 8th of June, 4th of June. 4th of June, we're going to cover Wells, single cinema theaters, as you mentioned, and one more. What was that? Dabbawalas, yes, thank you. Okay. But thank you to our wonderful panel for these insightful words of wisdom. Kruti, thank you for moderating so well. Thank you to our partners, the NGMA, Nidhi ji and Shruti, for hosting us, and the Kalagora Association. Lastly, to this audience for being here in such great numbers. And as I was mentioning, our next edition in this series is on the 4th of June. We are also celebrating International Museum Day 2025 with What Makes a Museum, Reimagining Spaces and Redefining Collections right here at the NGMA on the 15th of May. Many more programs, so either stalk us on Instagram or follow us on our website. Thank you once again for being here and have a wonderful evening. Just in time. Thank you.